I was attacked at my job the other day and decided to quit. I work, well worked, as an on-call technician at a warehouse facility. Basically, the company I worked for owns a slew of warehouses that various companies rent out to store various things, ranging from expensive paintings awaiting auction, luxury cars ready to ship out, one time a disassembled dinosaur skeleton. I have to admit it was pretty awesome having the parts of an ancient being take a pit stop in one of our hangars. It was a T-Rex, I think. My job in all this was to make sure everything was working properly inside these facilities. If a door won't open, they call me. If the lights go out, they call me. If the coffee machine inside the break room doesn't work, they call me. It was a good job, for the most part. A lot of the time I got to sit around, and when I did work, I was mostly on my own, so I could kind of work at my own pace while catching up on podcasts. Sometimes my boss would drop in and oversee the work. I think I exude an air of unenthusiasm, which is why he feels the need to keep a close eye on me every now and then. But all in all, I enjoyed it. Of course, that all changed last week. I had arrived from my shift at around 2 in the afternoon. This week I was working in Hangar 21, night shift. The client was storing some art pieces in the hangar for a week. I did poke around a bit. They had some covered paintings and boxed up statues. Must be a gallery waiting until they can move into its next venue, I thought. One that caught my eye was a figure made of completely black stone material. I think it might have been granite. I could see it through the wooden frame built around it, kind of like it was in a jail cell. It was human-like, a man's form cut from the dark rock, extremely fine detail on the muscles. Then there was the head. Instead of where a face should be was just nothing. A smooth surface, like a mannequin. I couldn't even see my reflection in it. It was a void. I had never seen a piece like that. But I don't really get out to many art museums, so maybe it was more normal than it felt when I stared at its expressionless figure. Now usually I start before 1, but someone was supposed to come by to pick up the stored cargo at midnight, so they wanted me to be there when they came. If I'm scheduled later, they get out of paying me overtime. Whatever, I thought. It was one day, and I had the next one off, so staying up that late wasn't a big deal. My shift started as my co-worker Glenn's was coming to an end. He was sitting in the break room when I walked in, leaned back in his chair, and eyes closed. I could see the beads of sweat around his forehead. His eyes opened when I came in. "Oh, thank goodness," he exhaled. "What's up?" I asked. "Busy day?" He stood up and went to his locker. "You don't know the half of it. The lighting system's been on the fritz, and you know I'm not as good with electrical as you. I don't know why, but the lights have been turning off all week." I nodded and read the whiteboard to the right of the coffee machine. Nearly every light had some sort of issue attached to it, a handful with a red X crossed through. I put what I was able to get to on there, but you should double-check my work too. "Could be something with the breaker. I'll take a look when I get set." "Thanks, man," he said, backpack slung over his shoulder, as he headed out the door. I started up the coffee machine. Caffeine was the first thing on my list today. I waited a couple of minutes, listening to the mechanical whirring of the machine as it came to life. Then it sputtered, gave one final cough, and died. I guess I'd be looking at the electrical now. I walked out of the break room and into the warehouse. Nearby, to the left of the break room, was the vehicle storage, forklifts and the like. I stuck my key into the electric maintenance cart. I heard the click and threw it into reverse, then drove forward towards the main electrical panel. I spent a few hours tinkering around with the equipment. I couldn't find any outright issues with breaker, so I just reset a few of the connections. Then I grabbed the scissor lift. That's a wobbly box that lifts you high into the air, for those of you who don't know. I used the lift to reach the lights up above. I redid the ends and hoped that would be enough to bring them back to lift. Thankfully, the lights were turning on as I made my way across the warehouse. The light from the skylights made it easy to work without needing the lights on. Of course, I had to maneuver around the artwork stored inside. In fact, most of the lights that wouldn't turn on were right above them. I had to move slowly and set the lift at odd angles to reach the lights without knocking anything over. I even had to use the extension a few times. On these lifts, you can activate a release at the bottom and push a part of the box outward to reach places the lift might not be able to drive under. It was when I was above that black statue, box extended, when I dropped one of my tools, a pair of cutters. It sailed through the air, all the way down and into a crack in the wooden frame around it. I swore to myself as I carefully maneuvered the lift to a spot away from the collection. Then I rushed over to get my cutters while praying that I hadn't damaged the statue. Thankfully, it was untouched. The featureless face was as smooth and unsettling as when I first saw it. No chips on the arms or body. I crouched and peered through. I could see my cutters just at the cusp of where I could reach. I noticed something else I hadn't seen before. Chains. Around each leg, just above the ankle, were a thick metal ring attached to the base of the statue with iron chains. I supposed it was part of the piece, some kind of commentary on how man was shackled by something. Like I said, I don't really get all that art stuff. I stuck my hand in, turning my head left as I tried to get as much length into my reach as I could. I felt the pair of cutters on the tips of my fingers. I grasped it. Then I heard the chains rattle. I jerked my arm out and backed up a little. I let out a couple of breaths and calmed down. I must have brushed against the chain when I put my hand in, I thought. That would make sense, even though I don't remember feeling the cold steel on my wrist or the weight of the metal against my arm. That must be what happened. I stood up and decided it was time for my second break. It was already dark outside. My watch read 10:22 p.m. As I walked back to the break room, I could swear I felt invisible eyes staring at me the whole way back. I filled up my third cup of coffee for the day and sat down. I was exhausted. This was the most work I've had to do all week. All those lights going out at once without there really being anything wrong with them. Whatever. I had tomorrow off, so as long as I got through today, I'll be fine. That's what I thought. The fluorescent bulbs in the room began to flicker. I stopped drinking and set the mug down. Then all the appliances started emitting sparks. First the coffee machine, then the microwave, even the mini fridge. Its dull buzz silenced. I pushed my chair back to stand. But before I could stand, all the lights in the break room shattered with a loud pop. I was enshrouded in darkness. Alone, I thought, until I heard the footsteps. Heavy, slow, measured, like a predator closing in on its prey. The worst part was that the sound was coming from directly behind me. I bolted out of the plastic folding chair and sprang forward, back into the warehouse. The lights I had spent all day fixing were still on, but all of them were flickering. I heard furniture scatter and chanced a glance through the break room window. I turned around just in time to see a large black fist crash through the glass. I put my right arm in front of my face as glass shards sprayed towards me. I felt their sharp edges leave shallow cuts across it. Then I spun on my heels and ran towards my cart. I jammed the key into the ignition and tried to turn on the orange electric vehicle. It stalled once. It stalled twice. I could see a large, dark figure approaching from the left. Finally, it sprang to life. I threw it in reverse just as the thing's shadowy arm gripped onto the front of the cart. I broke free from its grasp, but I only made it about 20 yards before the engine cut out. I looked up, back towards the creature. I couldn't see it anymore, but I could still hear the footsteps. The warehouse lights were starting to fail, darkness swallowing the north end of the building I had just escaped from. I sat in horror, each step growing louder, another row of lights dying, the darkness inching closer. I caught a glimpse of a leg step into the dim light before disappearing under a new layer of black. I swore and hopped out of the cart. I was near the art pieces we were storing. I looked straight down the middle at the case that was supposed holding the 8-foot-tall ebony statue. It was gone. The wooden frame was still intact. The chains I had seen earlier were lying on the base of it, still whole but no longer tethered. I felt my heart hammering as I ran, the veil of shadows consuming the warehouse. I didn't know where to go. I didn't think I could make it to the other exit before I was eaten by the darkness behind me. The scissor lift. I had left it near the art pieces. It should still be there. I prayed to God it still had a charge. I sprinted with renewed strength and clambered up the ladder and into the lift. I pulled the red button to turn it on. 2 out of the 5 battery lights were on. It would have to do. I pushed the lever forward and the lift surged forward, slower than the cart would be, but faster than if so tried to run. I could already feel myself running out of steam. All that time spent up in the hot ceiling had drained me. The shadows chased me further down the warehouse. I could see the figure again. It was running now, its arms and legs popping out from the darkness as it continued to spread in his wake. I couldn't see it, but I know its face would be blank. I wasn't going to make it. Desperate, I flipped the lift's controls, putting it out of drive, and instead began it up into the air. I had reached the lift's full height by the time it reached me. I saw its form begin to climb before the darkness caught up to it, the lift shaking dangerously as I had no doubt it was ascending. I could just catch flashes of its approaching figure from the pale light of the moon. The moon. I could see the light from the moon, the only source of illumination left in the warehouse. I looked behind and saw I was near a skylight, the full moon visible in the sky amongst the twinkling stars. I tried to push the lift forward, but it was dead. I let loose a cry of desperation and started to kick at the release for the extension. The box shook, and I saw a hand grip the railing at the other end. I felt in my pocket for my phone. Under 20%, but it could buy me some time. I threw on the flashlight and turned it at the statue. It slowed its approach under the light of the phone. It slowly pulled itself up towards the box, its blank face radiating malice. I spun back around and forced the release free, pushing the box outwards under the skylight, just as the battery on my phone died. I dove towards the safety of the moonlight. I sat there on the shaking lift, and the statue stood there hunched, stopped at the cusp of the pale glow of the moon. I closed my eyes and pretended that I was going to be okay. That's where the moving crew found me a couple hours later. I don't know when it slipped back into its cage, but the statue was back inside the wooden frame when they got there. I got accused of slacking off, all of the lights I was supposed to fix still broken. Of course, no one believed me. When my boss chewed me out, I just quit. I'll never forget that night. If it hadn't been a full moon, if the lift hadn't been near that skylight, that the light was even able to stop it. There are a million reasons I shouldn't have lived. I got lucky. Well, I thought. The thing is, the lights in my house have started to flicker over the last few days. I've had to replace my coffee maker twice. And last night, I swear I saw a tall, shadowy figure standing outside of my bedroom window,